Still, in the face of Russia's increased military activity and China's growing interest in the high north, it was crucial that we do more, which is why we have just 2 hours ago launched Arctic Sentry. Arctic Sentry leverages the strengths of the alliance by bringing together NATO and allied activities in the high north into one overarching operational approach to the region.
A new military chapter is unfolding in the Arctic. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has announced the launch of Arctic Sentry, a mission designed to reinforce security in what he calls an increasingly important region. The initiative comes as the alliance responds to growing Russian military activity and expanding Chinese interest in the high north. Rutte made clear that the mission is also intended to reassure U.S. President Donald Trump after he stepped back from earlier claims regarding Greenland. The Arctic, long viewed as remote and frozen, is now central to strategic calculations. Melting ice, emerging shipping lanes, and untapped resources have transformed the region into a zone of competition.
Still, in the face of Russia's increased military activity and China's growing interest in the high north, it was crucial that we do more, which is why we have just 2 hours ago launched Arctic Sentry. Arctic Sentry leverages the strengths of the alliance by bringing together NATO and allied activities in the high north into one overarching operational approach to the region. Initially, it will bring together exercises like Denmark's Arctic Endurance and Norway's Cold Response, activities involving tens of thousands of personnel and the equipment they need to operate successfully in Arctic conditions, making clear our commitment to ensuring Arctic security and indeed the security of the whole alliance together. We will talk, of course, tomorrow about how allies are planning further increases to their defense spending, ensuring that there is a credible path to our common goal. As allies invest more, it is crucial that the capabilities we need are available to buy. So we are building our defense industrial base. We need to produce more. This means more air defense, more ammunition, and stronger supply chains across the alliance. The Arctic and the high north are increasingly important for our collective security. NATO and allies have been sharpening our focus on the region. We regularly conduct exercises in the Arctic, ensuring that we are ready to fight and operate in all conditions. Finland and Sweden's membership greatly enhances NATO's posture in the region and our Arctic capabilities. So, tomorrow's meeting is about making NATO stronger by delivering on our defense investment and defense industrial commitments, strengthening our deterrence and defense, and sustaining our support for Ukraine.
Germany has now stepped forward with concrete military commitments. Berlin announced it will contribute 4 Eurofighter jets along with air-to-air refueling capabilities to support NATO's Arctic Sentry operations. The deployment strengthens NATO's aerial presence and enhances rapid response capacity across the polar theater.
Courtesy dictates that we first wait for the meeting of defense ministers, which begins tomorrow, where further details will be discussed. But I can say that the Bundeswehr, as in the past and as I have repeatedly announced, will also participate in the first stage of the Arctic Sentry. I can confirm that it will contribute 4 Eurofighters and the corresponding air-to-air refueling capabilities. What will happen beyond that will be agreed upon within NATO between the partners tomorrow and the day after tomorrow.
Meanwhile, Moscow is watching closely. Russia has already warned that any Western militarization of Greenland would trigger a response. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, speaking during a session with Russian lawmakers, said Moscow would take adequate countermeasures, including military ones, if necessary.
Russia in a complex competitive struggle of this asserting its legitimate rights in the emerging multipolar world order. And we often have to do this, despite the unwillingness of the Western minority to curb their excessive ambitions and conduct affairs respectfully with everyone. The Westerners do not wish to do this with all those who are ready to work on the platform of sovereign equality and other principles of international law. The majority of countries are like this. They are our partners, both reliable and full of promise. But the West still hasn't rid itself of the delusion of its colonial, and I'm not afraid to say, slave-owning greatness. The dramatic events of the beginning of this year, including the armed invasion by the United States into Venezuela, the escalation of American pressure on Cuba, attempts to destabilize the situation in Iran, and the crisis surrounding Greenland, all of which you have seen and heard about, confirmed our assessment that the world has entered an era of swift and very profound changes. Some experts are even saying we are in an era of great upheaval. But one thing is absolutely clear. This is not some momentary transient phenomenon, but rather a completely new stage of global development. Perhaps it could even be at an entire new era. This stage could last for many, many years or even decades. The simple situation in strategic stability also doesn't add optimism, whose degradation a number of European Russophobes baselessly accuse Russia of. Meanwhile, the initiative put forward by President Putin concerning the continued voluntary observance by the parties to the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty of the central quantitative limits enshrined within it received no official response from the American side. We operate on the assumption that this moratorium declared by the President on our behalf will remain in effect, but only for as long as the United States also does not exceed the aforementioned limits. And overall, we will act responsibly and thoughtfully based on a thorough analysis of US military policy. We conduct this analysis on a daily basis along with an assessment of the general situation in the strategic domain. Against the backdrop of the Russophobic hysteria that has engulfed Europe, the European Union's fairly servile position regarding Washington's claims to Greenland is quite remarkable. As President Putin pointed out, we proceed from the understanding that this issue does not directly concern us. The United States, Denmark, and Greenland must resolve this themselves, taking into account the views of the inhabitants of the largest island, of course, whom official Copenhagen for many long years and decades treated quite harshly, one might even say, as second-class people. There are sufficient facts regarding this. Naturally, should Greenland be militarized, with military assets aimed at Russia deployed there, we will take adequate countermeasures, including military technical ones. Our principled position, however, is that the Arctic must remain a zone of peace and cooperation. When discussing Greenland, it's impossible to ignore the fact that, as in many other instances, the proponents of peace and order, which are based on Western rules, are openly applying blatant double standards. The right of right of Greenlanders to self-determination is recognized, but the right of the peoples of Crimea, Donbass, and Novorossiya to determine their own destiny in unity with Russia is still denied. We fundamentally disagree with such twisted, openly biased logic and will uphold truth and justice in all our interactions with international partners, and will provide political and diplomatic support for the implementation of colleagues. We also believe we consistently emphasize that a sustainable and lasting resolution to the crisis, which was deliberately provoked by the collective West in Ukraine, is absolutely impossible without completely eradicating its fundamental root causes. Such an approach, as you know, was also recognized by the Trump administration. And on this basis, during the meeting of the presidents of Russia and the United States in Alaska last August, an understanding was reached on how to ensure a stable long-term settlement of the Ukrainian problem. These understandings remain on the table. We express our gratitude to our Emirati friends for their mediation efforts, including the provision of a platform for the organization of negotiations with the participation of representatives from Russia, the United States, and Ukraine. Russian negotiators are continuing their efforts to ensure that Russia's security along its western borders, the rights of Russian and Russian-speaking people are fully and reliably secured, and that the threat which is emanating from the current Kyiv regime and its external patrons is completely eliminated. the exemplary nature of the Russia-China Comprehensive Partnership and Strategic Cooperation was confirmed during the very recent contact between our leaders on February 4th, held via video conference. The head of the Russian state gratefully accepted the invitation to make an official visit to China in the first half of this year. We will actively, productively, and I sincerely hope prepare for it. By the way, in just a few days, the entire Chinese nation will celebrate the arrival of the new year according to the lunar calendar. And it remains to wish our friends that in the coming year of the horse, the red horse, the successes of the Chinese nation on its path to prosperity. Our ties with the People's Republic of China exert a stabilizing influence on the entire system of international relations, and at the same time play a most important role in addressing the strategic objective of forming a belt of good neighborliness along Russia's borders. Significant contributions to the creation of the Eurasian architecture are being made by the treaties that have entered into force. Those on security guarantees with Belarus and on comprehensive strategic partnership with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the Islamic Republic of Iran. We stand in solidarity with the peoples of Venezuela and Cuba, who, as I mentioned earlier, are subjected to severe external pressure. We are determined to provide our friends all necessary support together with other like-minded individuals, with all those for whom the ideals of freedom, sovereign equality, self-determination of the nations, and democracy in international affairs are not empty words. In cooperation with our partners in the association, we are continuing to discuss and implement the initiatives that were put forward and subsequently approved during the BRICS summit meeting held under the chairmanship of Russia in Kazan in the autumn of 2024. One of the most crucial objectives is to establish platforms within BRICS for the unimpeded conduct of trade, economic, monetary, financial, and investment relations. These platforms must not be dependent on illegal sanctions and other unfriendly actions by the West, which violate the norms and principles of global trade and international economic and financial relations. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the Nuremberg Tribunal's conclusion. On it, history delivered a verdict on the war criminals of the Third Reich and their accomplices. We will strive to ensure that the crimes of the Nazis and their collaborators against the citizens of the Soviet Union, which have no statute of limitations, are recognized by the international community precisely as the genocide of the Soviet people. Our foreign policy course, not determined by electoral cycles or personal preferences, will continue to be predictable and long-term in nature. Threats, blackmail, and pressure, no matter from whom they may originate, somehow will not influence it. The tasks that the President has set before the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are truly ambitious. We will continue to make every effort to ensure their successful completion. Our success is guaranteed by the high level of trust society places in us. And through you, esteemed colleagues, I would like to express my gratitude to the entire parliamentary body for your collegial support and constructive cooperation in numerous directions of our foreign policy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sergei Viktorovich. I appreciate it.